Hey guys, hopefully your quiz went really well. I'll get those graded for you and get them recorded pretty soon. I just want to make sure you know what you need to have out here as I go through this video. Several things actually, your red pen, but also have your PPTs out from Bell Work. We're going to be adding an A, B, and a C to that today. Mr. O'Leary will help you Kahoot SQ89 when I'm done with the video, so have that ready. And he gave you a handout on language families or different languages, so front and the back, so have that out. We'll look at that during class. And then worksheet page 33, if you'll have that ready to go. All right, I'll give you a second on that while I get the lights out here. Today we're starting chapter 5, which is about society, human interactions. And so we're just going to begin laying the groundwork for what all that what all that means today. And culture, the ways of society, is the name of this section that you guys read for today. So first of all, of course, when we're talking about human relationships, it really begins with the family, and that is certainly the first relationships that God instituted ever in this world. But as more and more population increased, people had to interact with others, and that created what we call societies. So this is your first definition, society. It's a group of people who share common characteristics, relationships, institutions, and culture. Now we'll talk about what a couple of these things mean as well. So as you're looking at these pictures up here, you'll see some things that are similar to what we observe in our society, and some things that are different than what we observe. And each culture has particular characteristics about it. It's going to be fun to study those as we go through the rest of the year. So number one, society. Now, when people hear the word culture, they tend to think of music and movies and things that we do like arts related, but culture is actually a lot more than that. And this is going to be your first definition to add to our list today. So put capital letter A, culture. Capital letter A, culture. And it is a society's total way of life, including all of its traditions and institutions. So you'll see some Greek culture here, some Tibetan culture here, just different things than we're used to. Culture, a society's total way of life, including all of its traditions and institutions. I'll try to give you enough time to write this down as we go, but if I'm going too fast, Mr. O'Leary can pause this. Just click pause and let y'all have a minute to do that, and then start it back up. So it includes all kinds of customs. It includes their literature, their art, their crafts, but also all of its traditions and institutions. So these are the two things that I want us to take a minute to think about what that means. So here's your B definition, traditions. Adding an additional definition, traditions. Traditions are the customs or usages that society passes down from one generation to the next. I always love to have a conversation here about the kinds of traditions that you observe in your family around holidays. And I'll start, and then you guys, Mr. O'Leary, can pause the video and just let you guys share some things too that are common in your family around holidays. We're getting close to one right now, Thanksgiving, one of my favorite holidays. And traditionally, my sister's family and my brother's family all get together for one giant afternoon of eating and just enjoying each other. We all three live in different towns. All of our families do, so it's a real joy to get together and to see each other. So that's a tradition that I have, and of course we have the traditional food of turkey and stuffing and pumpkin pies, and we all eat way too much. That's a tradition we have too. Um, so that's just an example. So if you want to pause the video here and you guys go ahead and share some of yours, just raise your hand and take turns on. Maybe you have some crazy Christmas traditions, or how you go get your Christmas tree, or how you do Christmas gifts, Christmas morning, Christmas Eve. What are some of your traditions in your family? So go ahead and pause the video for just a few minutes and share. Sure wish I had been there to hear all you guys. There's always something that makes me laugh, or I really enjoy hearing about your traditions. All right, then we're going to add one more. This is probably the word that is least familiar to you, and it's the word institutions. And this is just simply the formal organizations by which society transmits its traditions. And you guys just got through talking about one that's really important, and it is the most important one, the one that God instituted. Did you hear that word? Instituted the family in the Garden of Eden when he married Adam and Eve. So institution, these are organized things like the family that transmits culture, and I would submit that the family transmits the most culture in your lives by a long stretch. Also, education. You have a unique education in this world. Most of your peers are being educated in a government-run school. You have the blessing of being in a school that teaches the truth of God's Word through every subject. So your education is a different situation. Religion, certainly important to us here at High Point Christian Academy, but there are many religions in the world that really influence their culture as well. The Islam religion has major influence on how people behave and dress and eat and that kind of things. Economics, it's a system of freedom that you have or not. I mean, you guys remember the fake pop quiz, how capitalists had the most freedom to succeed. So whether your economy is in a country is capitalist, socialist, communist, has a big bearing on its society. And politics, that's very related to the economics. What type of government is there that transmits culture? So as you add definition C, institutions, the formal organizations by which society transmits traditions. Probably the family is the most transmissible. All right, so let's move on into the foundation of culture, which is language. Now, you're not born with culture. That is something that's very learned. And you're not born with language. That is also learned. So the language that you learn is the primary means for transmitting or teaching you the different aspects of your culture. So let's look at languages. Now, God, of course, speaks to us. He spoke audibly in the Garden of Eden. He spoke through his prophets. He speaks through his word to us. And that he communicates is one way that we, as his creation, are like him. We communicate. We speak. We write. And so that is a big part of who God is and who he made us to be, is communicators. So when we talk about what happened with language, why are there so many, this really goes back to after the flood. And you guys know the story. When Noah and his family, remember there are 8 of them, Noah and 3 sons and each of their wives, there's 8 people. And God commands them, once they get off of the ark, to spread out and repopulate the earth. It's like a second creation mandate that he gives them. But of course they do repopulate the earth, but they don't spread out. And that was a disobedience to what God had told them. So many generations later, you have all these people living in the valley down below Mount Ararat where the ark had rested. And they are just living it up. And they're just quite proud. And they're in sin. They think that they're as great as God and that they can build this wonderful tower, that they can get as big as God and reach him and just show that they're his equal. It's very, very humanistic response, that human thought and values should be the central feature of a culture. This is what Babel teaches. Now, of course, God said, we're not having that. So he came down and he absolutely dispersed. I don't know how many people were on the earth by then, probably hundreds of thousands, as many generations after Noah had been gone from the earth. And he sent each family unit in a different direction with a different language. So Shem's descendants got this direction and this language. Ham's descendants got this direction and that language. And Noah's descendants went that direction with that language, and Japheth's descendants got a fourth language in a fourth direction, and they did spread out and they did speak different languages. Now each family group could understand each other, but as they kept traveling on and spreading out everywhere, they encountered a barrier like a mountain range or a river or something that stopped their progress for a while. That kind of hemmed them in, and then some moved on beyond that. Eventually they would carry and create different languages, or they would kind of morph into different languages, for lack of a better word. So we're really up to about nearly 7,000 languages in the world now. It's hard to count, hard to know what that is, but languages originated with God. Here's one reason that it's a little difficult to count languages, because there are what we call dialects. Dialects are variations in patterns, speech patterns within a language. I don't know how many dialects there are of the Chinese language, just numerous ones. This is a really simplified example here, but this question asks, who are you? Well, depending on where you live in the United States, you might say, where is yous? Or you might say, where are y'all? That's pretty common around here. Or just plain old you, which would be correct. Where are you? Where are yous? Where are yuns? I grew up with a girl in the mountains who always said yuns for you. And I think she's contracting you-ones, yuns, yuns. But depending on where you live, you might say that word, meaning you plural, like you here in the room right now, in a different way. Now, it doesn't make it a different kind of English, but you get the point. There are some variations in speech patterns within a language that we call dialects, and that was your number 2. All right. Language families. This is another definition you need to have, number 3. A group of languages that share many common characteristics. Probably there are 10 language families in the world that 99% of the world speak one of the members of that language family. So I want you to look at your handout now that Mr. O'Leary gave you early. It's called The 10 Language Families in Detail. And the biggest one in the world is the Indo-European language family, and it includes our language. It's languages that are thought to have originated somewhere between India and Europe. So that big swath of land there between India and Europe is where we think that likely originated. So here's India, here's Europe. Everything on this map that is this orangey tan color is an Indo-European language. And it includes English, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, Russian, Greek, Hindi, Bengali, and some no longer spoken languages of Persian, Sanskrit, and Latin. So Indo-European languages, and you can see it's really scattered all around the globe. Over half of the world speaks an Indo-European language. And remember, that's the name of a family of languages that has a lot of common characteristics. All right, then the next one on your list, the Uralic family, somewhere around the Ural Mountains. That one developed. The Altaic family, Sino-Tibetan family, Malayo-Polynesian family, Afro-Asiatic family, Caucasian family, Dravidian family, Austroasiatic family, the Niger-Congo family. So like I said, 99% of the world speaks a language within these 10 language families. Then on the back of it, this is a kind of graphing, well, pie charts maybe, that just kind of give you the size of the bubble tells you what proportion of speakers of that language there are in the world. Now this goes into just individual languages here on the back. And the kind of astonishing statement there at the top says nearly 2/3 of the population of the whole world speak one of these 12 languages as their native language. Native language means their first language, the one they speak, that they were taught to speak first. Of course, Chinese is the most, and all dialects of Chinese, almost 1.4 billion people. Spanish, English, Bengali, Hindi, Urdu, Arabic, and then there's smaller numbers here along that line. At the bottom, this resource says that there are over 7,000 living languages in the world, and it tells you by continent where they live, where those number of languages are spoken. Asia and Africa have the most, and you can probably tell that by judging from the language family names, that a lot of them were in Asia and Africa. So it's just a resource to keep. You can now clip that into your binder and just keep that as a reference. There's nothing really to do on it. It's just some interesting reading. So Indo-European is the largest language family. Half the world speaks a language of the Indo-European family. Now we can get further subdivided down to that. Now this creature-looking thing here, this is the Indo-European language. And every small word on here is a different language that belongs to this family. But these branches represent what are called subfamilies. So subfamilies are where you have an increasing similarity to something else. So the Germanic branch, here we've got different, we tend to be in that, English, then the Celtic branch, the Latin, where the Romance languages come from. Now, Romance here does not mean, I love you so much. It means the language of Rome, which these languages came from Latin. So that tends to be that. Then Slavic languages, more Albanian, Baltics, Armenian, Indo-Iranian. So many of these languages are related, but they have their own little branch of subfamily too. All belonging to the one family called Indo-European. Now, written language. We don't really know how old written language is. Perhaps Adam and Eve wrote. We don't really know, and anything that was pre-flood is now, destroyed pretty much. So, but we did develop it somewhere early along the way, and it has helped us to have a precise history of ourselves, and it has allowed for a rapid spread of our culture too. 84% of the world's people are literate. Literate means able to read and write. Now, there are many poorer countries that are much lower than that bring that average down. Any developed country like the United States and all the European countries are going to be at least 95% literacy rate, and so forth. Of course, we go way back to written language, cuneiform, which was just reeds poking forms into the wet clay, then hieroglyphics of the Egyptians. The Romans developed the Latin alphabet to assign a sound per symbol. And then, of course, emojis, which is a ridiculous use of language, but yeah, you can have that. I use them too occasionally. I just don't send whole messages like that. So written language is an important way to pass culture on, is to have it in writing. Now, what about the world and the way it's divided up? So as descendants of Noah spread out and went around, after the Tower of Babel, they kind of, of course, went off in the different directions, like I pointed out earlier, and developed regions of similar culture because their languages were similar. Even as they developed different languages, they still were related. So culture region, as your number 4, is a human society that shares the same basic culture. Now we can divide our map of the world up into 8 culture regions. They are similar to the continents, the 7 continents. Of course, Antarctica doesn't have culture because it's just polar bears and penguins. So the 8 culture regions take in, I'll show you on a map, but you've got, these are the names of the culture regions, and some of them are the same as the continents. Africa, Asia, Central Eurasia, Middle East, Latin America, Northern America, Oceania, and Western Europe. So on a map, this is what that looks like. So Northern America is not the entire continent of North America, because culturally this part of the continent is more like South America. So adding Mexico and Central America to all of South America, this culture region is called Latin America. And this one is called Northern America. Northern America. I noticed that this is kind of fading in and out. I'll try to step aside better so you can see. Culturally, Western Europe, and they probably include the 3 people that live in Greenland on that one too. I just didn't want to get that circle all the way over there. Most of Africa is the culture region known as Africa, carving out Egypt because culturally it's more like this part of the world here that we call the Middle East. Asia, so Eastern Asia is more Eastern and Southern Asia is more culturally alike than this part of Asia, so it is its own culture region called Asia. And up here, this is Central Eurasia because it actually crosses the boundary between the 2 continents. And then Australia, New Zealand, and all these little islands over here, or half of this one, it's called Oceania. So those are your culture regions, and if you looked in the cultures in a big picture, you would see some similarities. You definitely know similarities between United States and Canadians. But if you looked more closely, you'd see some more things alike of the people here in Canada, and more people in the United States do more things alike. So you do have some sub-regions there that have increasing similarities to each other. So all these small words that you see are the sub-region names. There's 5 sub-regions in Africa: North Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa. Asia has 3 sub-regions: Southeast Asia, East Asia, and South Asia. For Europe, there's like 4 names here of the sub-regions that have some more close similarities to each other. So those are just some examples. So those are your culture regions, and then sub-regions have increasingly similar characteristics. And that was your last PPT for today, number 5. All right, so right now I want us to check your worksheet, page 33. So if you'll get that in front of you with your red pen. This has to do with languages, and we went through that part of it and through this handout here. So now's a good time to check worksheet 33. English, the lingua franca of the world. Lingua franca is a term that just means the most commonly spoken language in the world, the one that most people can speak, even if it's not their native language, that they can still speak it, makes it a lingua franca. So question number 1, what is the source language for the phrase lingua franca? And it's Italian. It's Italian. That's right there in the first line. The phrase lingua franca is Italian for Frankish language. And in whose court, what ruler that means, was lingua franca first used? That would be Charlemagne. Charlemagne's court was first used. 3 and 4. What 2 other languages have more native speakers than English? That would be Mandarin, that's the Chinese dialect, and Spanish have more native speakers. That means that's their first language. 5 and 6. What 2 main languages does the United Nations use for its primary documents? Everything is done in the 2 languages of English and French. And then number 7. How do you think the prominence of English has furthered the cause of world missions? Well, because English is the most spoken language in the world, even most people in other languages that is their second language that they learn. In China, they're all required to learn English, although they're fairly shy speakers. And in all European countries, they're required to learn English. So, as English speakers who know Christ go around the world to share the gospel, that really makes it easier, doesn't it? To find more people who understand and speak English. So it makes our cause a little bit easier to spread the gospel because English is such a commonly spoken language, even in countries where it's not a native spoken language. All right, it's that moment you've been waiting for. Time to check your SQ89, and I know it's a bit of a shortened day, so if you have time to Kahoot your SQ89, that'll be great. You need about 10 minutes for that, so check the time. If not, maybe we can hold that till the next class so you don't miss out on Kahooting. So let me show you your homework. Read the next section, pages 89 through 93, and do SQ93. So that is due on Friday. All right. So if there's time, check with Mr. O'Leary, go get your phones, and get ready to Kahoot SQ page 89. And I hope I see you guys soon. I'm so missing you. Bye.